Hello, it's Rose Simons, and I want to tell you the story about how I broke my magic wand and what that actually turned out to mean for me. So 6 weeks ago, in the middle of a really beautiful summer, when I had so much to look forward to, I fell over in the garden and broke my wrist. Here it is. Um, one moment I was bending over the earth, planting some flowers, and the next moment I was lying on the ground screaming with pain. I have no idea how the fall occurred. So the first phase of my loss, and when I talk about loss in the Sitting with Death and Choosing Life program, I talk about there's so many different ways that we experience, all of us experience loss. Loss is very common. It's a natural part of life. There would be no life without loss. But it's how we respond to those losses that really makes a difference, of course. So the first stage of that loss was shock. You know, obviously I was in pain. The shock was manifested through the physical pain. And the first day I didn't go to the hospital. I just wanted to wait overnight and see how, whether it was still hurting so much the next day, and it was. So I went off to the hospital. And they took an X-ray, and sure enough, they said that the wrist was really badly broken. And there is some, there's some relief in knowing what's wrong. So now I knew what was wrong, and they offered me painkillers to deal with the effects of the pain. But they also told me that if I took the painkillers, I'm likely to block up my digestive system. So I decided not to take the painkillers. I hardly ever take pharmaceutical drugs if I can avoid it. And instead of numbing the pain, avoiding the pain, I chose to stay with the pain and experience the pain. And I think that's one choice that we all have when we are in an experience of grief and loss. Are we going to numb ourselves out, or are we going to actually go through the experience? I'm not saying that obviously there are some times when painkillers are essential in short term, but I'm talking generally now about how we deal with our pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, both mental pain. So the first conscious choice I made was no, I'm not. I will live through the pain. I'll experience the pain, and then. I went the first 3 or 4 weeks of the healing process. I was just incredibly fed up. I mean, my overall philosophy of life for many years has been that there's always something positive to find in every experience, that maybe that this was something happening on a soul level and I had something to learn or whatever. But in the actual events of being having a broken wrist and not being able to go on holiday, as I planned not to be able to go out with my partner on his boat, which we planned to do, not be able to go swimming in the sea, all of these things. In the actual event, I just felt incredibly fed up. And these losses may seem pretty small and trivial when we look at the suffering that's going on in the world, but nevertheless, it was real for me. And I had that sort of almost could feel the small child in me having a temper tantrum and saying, it's not fair, this shouldn't be happening to me. And there is that part of us, and that part of us needs to be, given space and given a voice. I think there is, we've all heard about spiritual bypassing, that we can jump too quickly into understanding how this is an experience for our learning, and just not allow that part of us that's just really disappointed and fed up and feels hard done by. That part needs to be given space and a voice. So I didn't actually have much choice in that, because without my right hand, my dominant hand, there's very little that I've been able to do. I did actually continue to do my writing with one finger of typing on my computer with one finger of my left hand. I did that every day, first couple of hours of every day, because that was one of the ways of supporting myself. But when it came to the afternoon, whereas normally I would go and do some work in the garden, which I really enjoy, or I'd go for a walk, or what, any of those things, or do some drawing, whatever. Couldn't do any of that. So I tended to spend the afternoons just lying on the bed, sleeping or semi-sleeping, or just feeling quite depressed. And that too, it wasn't fun. It wasn't what I would have chosen consciously to have happened to me. But again, I could have avoided the depression. I could have, drunk, had a couple of gin and tonics or done something else that would have, or sat and watched Netflix or whatever. But actually I chose to be with that depression. And that turned out to be a gift, because it's in doing so, I started to revisit and uncover the roots of my lifelong on and off depression in my childhood. I went back to that childhood state of always feeling that I wasn't cherished, I wasn't nurtured enough for my liking, that I was kind of like an abandoned orphan a lot of the time. And so I revisited that, and I experienced all of that. And while that was happening, like my partner and I have only been together for about just less than 3 years, so we don't have a sort of history of going through a lot of difficulties with each other. And it was quite stressful at times. And I know when people experience the grief and loss or face into death, often it is very difficult with a partner or those close to us. Because it does bring up these aspects of us that feel that we've never really been properly nurtured, and you get this that child part that's just desperate to be taken care of, desperate to be loved and cherished and nourished. And at the beginning, anyway, with my partner, it was really difficult because he was grieving too. Because we were planning to go off on a trip, an adventure together, and he lost his adventure as well, and it was obviously it was bringing up things for him about other partners that he'd had taken care of and lost maybe. So we were quite stressed together for a while. And part of that for me was because I had to ask him to do everything for me. I had to ask him to put up my hair, to take the top of a bottle, to cut my lemon in half and squeeze it, every single little minutiae of life I could no longer do for myself, and I had to ask him to do it for me. And I had to learn how to ask him in a way that he wouldn't become reactive. And over time, that actually got a lot better. And I would say that in the longer term, this period of me being dependent on him has strengthened our relationship. But at the beginning, it just felt like that was another layer of stress. And of course, I was trapped in it because I couldn't get away. As a young woman, I might have just leapt in the car and gone off somewhere or whatever, but I couldn't do anything. So I was really didn't have any choice but to be with all of my experiences. So the first level, the first sort of phase of grief loss, if you like, is shock. In some cases, if that hits into old trauma, awaken that trauma as well. I'm talking about resistance, how we can resist actually going into the grief, accepting it. We don't want to accept it. This is too awful. This isn't who I thought I was. This isn't what I thought life was. I'm not in control. That's a big one. I'm not in control. So I don't like it. I don't like what's going on. I'm not in control. Actually, I can't bear it. I don't know if I've got the resources to see myself through that. So there's all these different sort of old conditionings, old limiting beliefs are coming up in the crisis, in the loss. There's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of time that can be filled up with memories, and if you're not careful with recriminations, feelings of not being good enough. Oh, maybe this is, I'm feeling unloved and unnurtured because I'm not good enough. That's so basic to so many of us. So all of this was happening. So that's the second set of resistance. This shouldn't be happening to me. I don't want to experience this. I don't like it. I can't bear it. Just take it away. Take it away. So that's resistance. And then there comes a there comes a point, I think, where, or for me anyway, where I realize that resistance is foolish, that I can't really resist. This is what's happening and I can't really resist it. And that's the point of what I call surrender, or letting go, or actually really, really letting go into experiencing the grief, really letting go into experiencing my helplessness, my disability. And for me, it's not only that I'd hurt my hands, it's also that I have arthritis, and so I don't move very well. So this was quite a confrontation for me with getting older, with the prospect of increasing disability as I get older, and dependency, and all of that means. Big question, big existential doubts, questions, and fears arising through this loss. But then, as I said, there's a surrender, just allowing it, just letting it be, letting whatever arises arise, witnessing it, watching it, noticing what I'm feeling. And then and these phases, they don't necessarily happen in a linear way, of course. You can move from shock into surrender, and then back to resistance, and then the next part I call adaptation, which is where start to change around that I can't bear this, to what can I do to help myself through this? What resources do I have to get through this? So there were lots of little practical things, like my partner made me a little gadget for the kitchen where I could hold a jar so that it was easier for me to take the lid off, and that sort of thing. Or another way of resourcing myself was, as I said, to do my writing every day, because that really nourished me. It kind of opens up the channel. When I'm writing, it opens up the channels of communication, of connection. And that's why I call this when I broke my magic wand, because as a writer, I always, nearly always write with my hand, in handwriting, when I'm doing something creative in the first instance. When I'm editing or tidying it up, I'll do it on the computer. But at the beginning, I always write with my hands. And it's like the sort of inspiration is coming through me, whether it's coming through from above, from the cosmos, whether it's coming through my heart, from the connection with the collective, or it's coming up through the earth, or from my soul, wherever that communication is coming from, it comes down my hands. It's like I'm sort of, there's an invisible communication, an invisible intelligence coming down through my body, through my hands, and onto the page. And then in the act of writing, in the act of tidying up the writing, I actually create a form. So that's something magical, I think, that's part of the creative process, that we can take something invisible, an idea, an imagination, a vision, a dream. We can take that and make it into something concrete, which is what I'm doing now. I'm making a video, I'm making something concrete out of my experience that I can share with you. So for me, when I no longer had my right hand, I started to recognize how this ability to just sit down at any time, anywhere, and write had been like a friend, a companion to me. This hand is not just my magic wand, it's also my friend and companion. And suddenly that wasn't there anymore, or it was broken, wounded in my most, in my creative ability. So that was a big challenge as well. So there's this period of adaptation where we start to look for creative solutions. How am I going to get through this? What practical things can I do? And as I said, part of that as well was finding ways to be with my partner so that he felt good about helping me rather than reactive. And then there's the next phase, which is when we've surrendered, when we've experienced, when we've mobilized our resources to help ourselves, that we start to find the gifts in the loss. And as I said at the beginning, I couldn't see any gifts at all. I wanted to throw the whole philosophy that I'd been working on and spreading to others away, and just say, this is just nonsense. There are no gifts in this. This is just horrid. But I started finding the gifts after about 4 weeks. And the first one was to really begin to appreciate what an amazing thing the body is, how intelligent the body is, how resilient the body is, how creative the body is, how the body just works on its own. It just, I don't have to think about, am I going to take the next breath, or is the blood going to pump through my veins? It's just happening. This body is part of life, and I just really came to a much bigger appreciation of this intelligent, energetic being that the body is, and that obviously the body is part of life. So not just is my body beautifully synchronized most of the time and working naturally and organically, but this body is also part of the bigger life, which is also perfectly synchronized and working, constantly adapting to new circumstances, constantly keep recalibrating and rebalancing. So after this period of feeling that I was separated from life and really feeling into all those old feelings of abandonment that I'd experienced as a child, I actually ended up feeling more embedded in life. That was a big gift. The progress, the development of a relationship with my partner is another big gift. Developing my skills in asking for help and not having to do everything by myself, because that was a decision I made very early on as a child, that I was going to take care of myself and do everything. And now I'm learning how to delegate, how to ask for help, which is absolutely essential with the work I'm doing with Sitting with Death and Choosing Life, because I'm working with other people, I'm developing a team. And how are other people going to bring their fullness if I don't let go of the control of everything? So there are lots of gifts. Having that space to do another level of healing around my childhood wounds. I certainly wasn't pleasant, didn't enjoy it, but it was a gift nevertheless. So in uncovering the old childhood choices that I'd made to do to be independent, to do everything on my own, to willfully push through or to run away when things got hard, to be constantly restlessly going here and there. Here I was forced to be very still and unmoving. That was a gift. So we can, through this process of sitting with death, sitting with grief, sitting with loss, we can come to a point where we can make new choices. And these new conscious choices will lead to creative empowerment, to us becoming more stronger, more resilient, more able to offer our gifts to others. So I hope that quick romp through 6 weeks of breaking my magic wand has helped, might throw some light for you on losses that you've experienced. And obviously we're all different. But I think there is some similarity in these kind of phases of the grieving process: shock, resistance, surrender, adaptation, and finding the gifts. Thanks for listening.